Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're at. Today, we are really excited to have you here in our journey through BigQuery Migration Service. And we are also going to present a demo of the service to you. Super excited to show you what we've been up to and what is coming very, very soon. My name is Mohit Virendra, and I'm a product manager for BigQuery Migrations. With me is my colleague Zihao Yi. He is the technical lead manager for BigQuery migrations. So let's jump in. You, as a customer, want to migrate to Google Cloud, and you want to do it for a multitude of reasons. There are several ways to migrate your workloads to Google Cloud, three of which are very pertinent to migrations to BigQuery. The first one we are talking about is lift and replatform, which is a non-breaking way of migrating, and it results in substantial savings and the least disruption of the three techniques described here. This is our recommended approach because here you get a good trade off between less disruption, low risk, and a fairly high impact to your migrated state. So essentially, what you do is you perform an assessment of what your data warehouse looks like. You have your SQL code and other code objects translated to BigQuery, and then you move data over. This is the lift and replatform approach. And then, of course, once you've moved, that's when you optimize. There are two other approaches which are on quite the opposite ends of the spectrum. Some customers are not quite ready for a full replatform, or they don't have time for a heavy lift migration before they actually need to get out of a data center. So we can always fall back to a more conservative recommendation, which is to get your services onto Google Cloud first and then plan for a data migration later. So offerings like Teradata Vantage on Google Cloud or Databricks on Google Cloud, they do allow for a relatively quick transition. But those are without the improvements that would come with a full replatform. So this is the most conservative end of the spectrum. On the exact opposite is the most aggressive approach, which is for a clean break with your existing systems and going all in into cloud-born products. This also means rebuilding your data platform from scratch on Google Cloud. While this approach is more time consuming and requires the most development, but once implemented, it also results in the highest cost savings of the three. But the route that's taken by a majority of the customers is the lift and replatform. So let's go on that journey together and see how BigQuery Migration Service can help you achieve that. So, what is BigQuery Migration Service? It's a comprehensive solution for migrating to BigQuery. It enables end to end, fast, lower risk, lower cost migrations with predictable and free tools. These tools cover migration planning, data transfer, automated SQL and script conversion, and data verification. The BigQuery migration service comprises of four different services: assessment, SQL translation service, the data transfer service, and the validation service. Let's give you a brief synopsis of each. The SQL translation service is in public preview for Teradata. It solves one of the hardest pieces of data warehouse migration, which is modernizing legacy business logic in SQL queries, DML, DDL, scripts, and stored procedures. It reduces manual effort, time, and errors to migrate. It provides fast, semantically correct, and human readable translations of legacy objects with no ongoing dependencies. Translations can be run in batch mode or in Google Translate like interactive translation mode. This is the service that Zihao is going to demo for us today. Then, of course, we have the data transfer service, which will move your data, and the data validation service, which verifies the correctness of your data. So the suite of services allows you to customize your BigQuery migrations according to your needs. Large number of customers have used it to successfully translate millions of queries. We encourage you to try it out. Let's jump in. Assessment is a service we launched in public preview very recently. It's a free service, it's a smart service, and it's automated. What does it mean? Well, free because it requires no additional licenses, smart because it provides really good recommendations, complete with a migration plan on how to migrate your workload from your data warehouse to BigQuery. And it's fully automated and has a really powerful interface. So, what problems does assessment solve? Why do you need an assessment in the first place? Well, when you're planning to migrate your data warehouse, you have certain things that are top of mind. Like, what are the risks during the migration process? Can I actually trust this migration process? Are the risks mapped and are the mitigations identified? Do I know the characteristics and snapshot of my system? Do I actually know what's happening in my system? Because systems build, evolve over time. And oftentimes, there's so much legacy debt that when it comes to migration time, there are number of artifacts that a lot of people have very little understanding of. So what assessment does is it provides you those characteristics, snapshots of those characteristics. For example, how many databases are there? How many tables are there? What SQL objects do I have currently? What are the sizes of each of the tables? What's the wastage? Are things being used or not? Who are my main users? And what are they using? When I migrate, what are the tools that would be impacted? Can I move my applications with minimal disruption? What's the complexity of my SQL queries to convert? And how much of them can be converted automatically? And for those that cannot be, how much effort is required to convert the remaining parts? So that's all assessment in public preview for Teradata today. What's coming and what we are really excited about are multiple dialects beyond Teradata, an easier cost estimator, and more detailed machine learning enabled optimizations. So stay tuned for those. The next piece is the SQL Translation service, which has also been launched in public preview for Teradata. That's what's available today. So it performs automated SQL translation and it's accessible in all BigQuery regions via Pantheon UI, public API, and client libraries. I'm happy to pass it on to my colleague Zihao to walk you through a demo of the SQL translation service. Over to you, Zihao.
Thank you, Mohit. My name is Hao from BQMS SQL Translation team, and I'll go through a demo to show how SQL Translation service works.
In this demo, we are going to talk about the batch and the interactive SQL Translation service. Firstly, let's start with the interactive SQL Translation service. This is basically a feature to conveniently help customer to convert external SQL queries into BigQuery SQL. To enable the feature, users can expand the more menu on the BigQuery query editor and then enable the SQL translation there. Then the BigQuery query editor will become a split view, which on the left-hand side will take the SQL queries in Teradata syntax, and on the right-hand side it will show the translation queries in BigQuery syntax. Firstly, let's write some SQL query on the left-hand side. We basically have a select query from a demo table to show how the data in the table looks like. Users can click Translate, and then the queries will be translated into BigQuery syntax. Users can also just run the SQL query on the right-hand side. And from here, we can say for the demo purpose, I prepared the Google stock price for the past 1 year. Users can continue running more analysis by writing more SQL query on the left in Teradata syntax, click Translate, and then run the query on the right-hand side. The interactive SQL translation also supports translate multiple SQL queries in one shot. In the next example, we have two SQL statements. The first one, we create a UDF, and the second one, we leverage the UDF to calculate the average price. Again, we just translate the SQL statements. Both of them are translated and show on the right-hand side. Then users can run the SQL translation results, and then we can observe both of the statements will be executed sequentially. Users can also just observe the execution results for any of the translation output statements. Lastly, we also have another interesting query, which it basically defines an investment strategy that we want to buy the stock on the first day of the month and then sell the stock on the last day of the month. We translate the SQL query, and then the BQuery version is generated on the right-hand side. Then we run the SQL translation results. And this time we can observe if we stick to the investment strategy and then we trade one share, then it will give us $810 profit for the past 1 year. This is basically the interactive SQL translation feature. And the use case is for data analysts to essentially convert some ad hoc SQL queries from Teradata SQL into BigQuery SQL. Data analysts can also leverage this as a learning tool to discover and learn the difference between Teradata syntax and BigQuery syntax. If you have more SQL queries and then you want to migrate the SQL queries at scale, we also provide a similar SQL translation service called Batch SQL Translation. This is embedded in the BigQuery page under the Migration tab. There is a SQL translation entry. So the service we have here is basically it will translate the SQL queries in GCS buckets. It will read the SQL files, do the translation, and then generate the SQL translation outputs as GCS files back into GCS buckets. So to start the translation, users essentially start the translation job. Users ask to fill in a form to describe the needs. So users will have a name for the translation job. And for the demo purpose, we will basically take the Teradata SQL as a source, and then we'll show the demo to translate from Teradata SQL to BigQuery. The next step, users will describe the location of the translation source file. And this is basically be described by a source path in GCS. Users can navigate to the path by click browse and then expand the folder structure in GCS. For demo purpose, I prepared an input folder which contains a single demo file. So let me select the input folder. And similarly, users will be asked to provide another GCS path which will be the path to contain the translation output files. And for demo purpose, I created the output folder here. So the results will be generated in the output folder. We also have some optional setting. For example, we support a schema path where users can specify a third GCS path describing the DDL files. SQL translation will leverage those DDLs to understand the type information in SQL queries so that it can do more accurate semantic translation. We also have the file encoding option. Users can choose different encoding for the text files. We also provide the option how user want to handle the SQL identifier case, either update them to uppercase, lowercase, or just keep them as original. We also have a special token map, and users can leverage the special token map to annotate some special tokens in the source files, so that the SQL parser is able to understand the special token and then to pass the SQL query and generate a more accurate translation results. After users have filled in the form, users can trigger the job by create the job. The job will basically be tracked in the page. It will be a background job, so users are feel free to leave the page and to come back later to check the results. And during the running of the job, it will basically first reach out to customer-owned GCS buckets to read the SQL files from the bucket, and then it will process the SQL translation in memory, and then generate the translation results into the destination bucket. So the whole process will leverage the end user credential which is captured at the job creation time. So let's refresh the page to see how the SQL translation goes. So it looks like the translation is completed. Users can also just click Show Details to see how the statistics for the translation. And from here, we basically tell you how many queries we observed, how many of them are translated, and how many of them we think we cannot translate. And below, we also have a detailed tray view structure to show the SQL translation failure category and the error message, why it failed. And users can also leverage this to essentially go to the file and find the actual location the error occurs. After the translation job has done, users can click the destination bucket to go to see the translation results. So the output file will keep the same name as the input file. If the translation input GCS buckets contain a more complex folder structure, the same folder structure will also be maintained. In addition to that, we will also generate a summary file in CSV format, which will capture all the translation issues in the table. This is more for users' convenience that users can leverage this to do some more structured analysis on the translation issues. So this is basically all for the batch SQL translation. Both the batch and the interactive SQL translation service are in public preview, and we do receive the many SQL translation attempts from the customer and then shared back some translation results for the customer. So if you have some Teradata SQL and are interested into migrate to BigQuery, then just give the SQL translation service a try and then let us know how it goes.
That's all for the demo. Back to you, Mohit.
Thank you, Zihao, for that wonderful demo. Let's talk about where are we heading to. So with the SQL translation service, we are happy to tell you that we are enhancing it, fortifying it with the technology called CompilerWorks. This will allow us to expand our assessment capabilities, expand dialect coverage and translation capabilities. Some of the dialects are listed on the right hand side, and CompilerWorks is also going to be able to help us provide richer insights and optimization recommendations. While we work that out, while we make CompilerWorks an integral part of our SQL translation service, in the interim, we also have a program to make CompilerWorks available to Google partners via a Partner Advantage program. So if you're a Google partner, we encourage you to go check this out if you have not already. CompilerWorks as a Google offering is being used for live workload translations for large customers by several of our partners already. So please do go check it out. The third piece in your migration journey to BigQuery is the data transfer. Our data transfer service is a managed, no code, serverless, free offering that allows ingestion of unlimited data. Let me talk a little bit about each of these. It's a fully managed first class cloud offering, which means that you get information on status of your jobs, logs, notifications, and of course, you get a single pane of glass monitoring. It's no code, which means you don't have to write a single line of code. The service is completely configurable via a UI, a CLI, or an API. It's also serverless, which means that you don't have to pay for any infrastructure. It already uses BigQuery slots that you've already provisioned. And the best part is it's completely free, which means you only pay for the data that you store in BigQuery. The last piece in our journey is the data validation service, which again is free, open source, and is fairly powerful. We decided to open source this service because we want our customers to feel confident when they run a piece of code on their premises. They have complete visibility. This is the exact opposite of a black box offering. You can completely see what's happening, and this open source framework is actually based on IBIS Python framework. So the data validation service performs validation between your on-prem data warehouses and BigQuery as a target. It has three cool features or three cool differentiators. First of all, it's highly customizable. It's customizable at multiple levels to perform validations between source and targets at table level, at column level, and at row level. That's number one. Number two, new validation rules are easily pluggable. Number three, there is event based triggering and orchestration available via integrations with other Google Cloud services such as Cloud Functions, Cloud Run, and Cloud Compose. This service also supports a large number of data sources, which means a large number of dialects. And it also has integration with a bunch of Google Cloud services. So this service is a very, very, very useful tool to give you peace of mind that your migrations are indeed successful. So, to summarize, we've talked about four components today: the assessment service to build a migration plan to understand how your migration is going to look like and how much is it going to cost, a SQL translation service to translate all of your SQL scripts, DDL, DMLs, then a data transfer service to move over your data, and finally, a data validation service to make sure that your workloads are successfully migrated and everything is working as intended. You too can take advantage of this BigQuery migration service end to end offering, and you can reap the benefits of migrating to BigQuery. Do reach out to us and do check it out. Thank you very much.